Well, just rewinding a bit, there's probably thousands of school teachers around the world sitting, chewing their pencils, daydreaming about becoming best-selling novelists. How did you get your inspiration? Where did you start?
Well, I grew up in a family of storytellers. My mum and dad, my dad was a storyteller, not formally but casually, and he would tell us stories all the time in the car. There were 5 boys in the back, so just to stop us killing each other. And I often thought, to me, that was like magic. It was like being a doctor or something, where you can just make stuff happen. And he would just pull stories out of the air. And I loved that about him. And my mum did it as well. She still does it. And I grew up thinking that this was a very valuable thing to do, a very valuable talent to have. And this was encouraged by my parents, who never told me to grow up or stop scribbling. Or they always said, "Yeah, write your book. Put on a play." And I learned to read doing my mother's lines with her, because she was an amateur actress. And so from the age of 3 or 4, I would be doing all the parts in whatever play she happened to be doing at the time. And occasionally she'd say, "Oh no, we'll skip over that bit." So I would do all the parts and all the voices. And so by the time I got to school, I was already reading plays. And these kids, I was like, "What, these kids, they can't even read. What is this alphabet rubbish? I'm 4 years old." But they caught up in about a week. But for that week, I was the king of school.
Well, obviously, one of your mandates as laureate in Ogue is working with children and projects for children. And a really magical one you started was Once Upon a Place. Tell me about that.
Well, I often regretted as a child that I had no access to writers. And I often wondered what they were like. And in my mind, they were all, I had seen a documentary about Roald Dahl, and they were all kind of living in England with hunting dogs. And they had obviously a country manner, and they would sit by the fire in the evening and write across their knee. And that image stayed with me for a long time. And while that was lovely, I thought, I can't be a writer, because I'm not exotic at all. I live in a small house in a small town. I've got 4 brothers, and I'm the most ordinary person going. And I thought, if I had met a few writers when I was younger, I would have seen that anyone can be a writer. And so I coupled that with the Irish tradition of storytelling, which was the filla. And it always struck me as a kid, we were always told that back in the old days, the filla, the storytellers, they were like the rock stars. And I thought, I liked the sound of that. I'm like the rock stars. And that inspired me, I want to be that rock star. I didn't realize that time doesn't exist anymore, and that people have electricity and televisions and actual rock stars. So they don't need, so when I go roaring into a town and go, "Yes," it doesn't really work very well.
Children are so much more advanced these days. How do you keep an interest? How do you get young people interested in reading?
Well, one of the ways is by telling them stories verbally, whether they want to hear them or not. You will be entertained. And my mother was so happy. She, "Oh, my beautiful son is going to be in here making his first Holy Communion." But then the smile dropped from her face, because there was 99 children doing this. And then there was one child doing this. And so we go around, and this is what Once Upon a Place is all about. We take kind of a roadshow of storytellers, and most of them would be published writers, but a lot of the time we just pick storytellers who, and we go around to schools or strange places, and we descend, and then for the day or 2 days even, we tell as many stories to as many kids as we can. We went to a halting site then, and I got a ride on the sulky, and I went inside, and your perceptions change. I thought, I will go in and they'll be amazed by the powers of my storytelling. And then after 5 minutes I realized nobody's listening to me. These kids want to tell me stories.
Let it go, Frozen. I am the only person in the world who has not seen the movie Frozen.
And so the whole thing reversed, and they all kept one at a time. And I think the biggest thing was they loved dogs, and they all had a dog. So they all made up a story about their dog.
Where does a character like Artemis Fowl come from?
Well, most of my characters are based on my family or my friends. And Artemis was based on one of my brothers, and actually a photo of one of him when he made his first Holy Communion, and he had the suit on, and it would have been the late 70s maybe. So it was like that Roger Moore safari look, which has never come back in.
Strangely enough.
Strangely.
I know.
But I looked at him, and he was kind of doing blue steel at the camera, and I thought, he looks like a little James Bond villain. I thought, that's a great idea. A James Bond villain who's 12. And it kind of went, I had that idea in my head for a long time, and until I eventually put them together with some fairies, and Artemis Fowl was born.
So every young person watching this probably wants to know, will there be another Artemis Fowl book, or perhaps you've got another character like him on the way?
Well, I don't think there'll be an Artemis book, but he has two little twin brothers who are very interesting characters, Miles and Beckett, and I think they would have something in them. You know, they're really good characters, and they became really popular. They were only born in book 4, and then they became very popular over the next 4 books, and so I think they might branch out on their own and cause some mayhem.